Hello, and welcome to the Edifice of Trust podcast. The Edifice of Trust podcast is a thoughtful discussion of today's current events from the perspective of America's founding principles. Hello, everyone. The difference between capitalism and socialism is easy to explain. Capitalism creates wealth, and socialism distributes wealth. But of course, this would be a very short commentary if it was all that simple. A society without wealth would be impoverished, and the lives of the denizens would be misery. So a society, any society, needs some wealth in order to survive. Our ancient hunting and gathering ancestors had very little wealth and depended upon the abundance of the land to supply their needs. But drought, winters, other natural disasters, as well as the predation of other tribes of humans, constantly threatened that abundance. Little of that natural abundance could be stored for future consumption, so most was consumed immediately and shared relatively evenly among the tribe. The development of agriculture provided greater abundance, but the distribution of that abundance became a problem. Control of arable land and the ability to store agricultural products meant that the natural abundance could be accumulated for use in the future. But the power of certain individuals or families meant that some members of those primitive societies had abundant resources and others only meager resources. In primitive times, that stored abundance was considered wealth. The landed aristocracy was wealthy and the peasants were poor. And that was the way of the world for many thousands of years. In the 18th century, 90% of all people were still agricultural workers. Land was wealth, and monarchs dispensed property and land to loyal supporters. But the Industrial Revolution created new opportunities to accumulate wealth. The landed aristocracy disdained such mundane activities, so many of the new industrialists were commoners. With many new entrepreneurs and many new avenues to create wealth, the Industrial Revolution transformed England, the United States, and eventually the entire world. So, yes, capitalism creates wealth. It also distributes wealth, but it distributes wealth unevenly. And as Adam Smith wrote in his book, The Wealth of Nations, capitalism does not distribute wealth out of the goodness of the capitalist hearts. This new system of capitalism and free markets allowed individuals to use their hard work and ingenuity to better themselves. It was in their self-interest to do so. But these new industrial processes needed the inputs of a wide range of market participants, such as suppliers of raw materials, teamsters to haul the products, and workers to increase productivity. Not everybody can be a capitalist or entrepreneur, but everybody has a self-interest, and some people can best serve their self-interest by working for others. So some of the wealth being created by our capitalists will be distributed among workers, suppliers, and others, and others in the economy, the butcher and the baker, according to Smith, who directly or indirectly supply the needs of the capitalist. The unequal distribution of wealth in a capitalist society creates two problems. One is that the distribution could be so unequal that an unacceptably large proportion of the population lives in absolute poverty, as was the case in the initial stages of the Industrial Revolution. This gave rise to new schools of thought on how to redistribute the wealth of the capitalists, such as Fabian socialism and Marxist communism. But the demise of capitalism, as foreseen by these early socialists, never happened, as workers, after many struggles, were able to appropriate a sufficient proportion of the capitalist wealth to live a middle-class life. But the difference between capitalist wealth and socialist distribution is never easy, and we seem to be in a period where many people believe that the balance is too much in the favor of the capitalist. The second problem of the unequal distribution of wealth is envy. The lavish wedding of billionaire Jeff Bezos to his second wife in Venice is said to cost many millions of dollars and has generated large protests on the streets and canals of that ancient town. It does not matter that all that money goes to pay local workers and artisans, which is a boon to the local economy. The envy of the protesters is not driven by their desire to improve the lives of the people in Venice, but to bring down Mr. Bezos. Their desire is for an egalitarian society where no one person has greater wealth than any other. This desire for egalitarian or socialist society, driven by envy disguised as social justice, is what caused the recent upset victory of the admittedly socialist Zohan Mamdani in the Democratic primary to be the next mayor of New York City. But socialist societies also suffer from two problems. The first and biggest problem is that socialist societies do not create wealth. They only distribute wealth. Read John Rawls' book, A Theory of Justice, and you will discover that he writes only about the just distribution of goods. There's no discussion of the just production of goods. Mr. Mamdani won the primary, which in heavily Democratic New York City is tantamount to the general election, by promising free bus rides, free child care, and a $30 minimum wage, along with government grocery stores, rent freezes, and public housing. But free bus rides still cost money. Buses are expensive and bright, and drivers need to be paid. No problem. Tax the wealthy and the large corporations. But then what are you going to do when the wealthy New Yorkers and corporations lining Fifth Avenue join all the Californians in Florida and Texas? The owner of Gristede's grocery store chain, John Katsimatidis, has said that he will relocate if Mamdani follows through on government-owned grocery stores where prices are set by politics instead of competition. Those citizens remaining in New York will be equally poor. The other problem with egalitarian societies is government power. The wealthy, along with the not so wealthy, do not willingly give up their hard-earned wealth easily. Force is required, and that force requires government power. However, the exercise of that government power will not be limited to just taxing the wealthy. Good progressives would never let all that government power go to waste. Power to control rents, power to make taxpayers pay for free riders on buses, power to force small business to pay distracted or inept workers $30 an hour, but not allowing the owners to pass the cost on to consumers. They will make your life better, whether you wanted it or not. There is one more advantage that capitalist societies have over socialist societies, despite the unequal distribution of wealth. The inequality of wealth distribution in a capitalist society is, to an extent, voluntary. Poor people willing to work hard and study hard can begin to increase their wealth. And when their circumstances improve due to their own drive and initiative, they can feel proud of what they accomplished. That's why America, even though incomes are not equal, is known as the land of opportunity and not the land of equality. That opportunity is the reason so many people want to immigrate to our country, that they are willing to endure unbearable hardships to try and get here. People in socialist countries lack the opportunity to gain that sense of accomplishment. Remember, the Berlin Wall that separated capitalist West Germany from communist East Germany, of which I have a piece in my study, wasn't designed to keep opportunity-seeking immigrants out, as is the case in the United States. It was built to keep the depressed and discouraged East Germans in. So that, folks, is the difference between capitalism and socialism. Thanks for watching. Links to source material used in preparing this podcast can be found on my website, www.edificeoftrust.com.